Hey, and welcome to the Deep Resilience Podcast. I'm your host, Melli O'Brien, and in this podcast, along with my weekly newsletter and the Deep Resilience program, we are focusing on one clear goal: translating the best evidence-based tools and the deep wisdom teachings on mental resilience into practical everyday strategies that are accessible to everyone. It is my deep passion to bring you content that breaks down big concepts in ways that make sense to you, but also to make sure I give you tools in each episode that you can immediately use to grow your inner strength and create real positive change in your life and in the world. And hey, if you want to take your inner strength to the next level, be sure to join my newsletter at melliobrien.com, where you'll receive a whole range of extra benefits, special offers, and bonuses. Let's dive in now to today's episode. Hey, welcome to season 4 of the Deep Resilience podcast. I've just been taking a little break. I've been running some really in-depth programs. In the past couple of months, I've been taking hundreds of people through programs, learning about how to become deeply resilient. And the great thing about all of this fresh work with people, I've been coaching on a lot of live calls, is that it's reminded me of some of the fundamental challenges that happen when people are trying to change. And so today I wanted to share with you one of the greatest insights, one of the most powerful insights that I've observed running these programs and seeing the difference between people who really unlock quite rapid change and people who can get a little stuck. And it's something I've seen over and over in my clients, in my groups, in myself. And once you understand this, change starts to feel less like pushing a boulder up a hill and more like sailing with the wind at your back. So in this episode, you're going to learn why our brain is wired to resist change, the biggest trap that people fall into when trying to grow, and a simple practice, but a very, very potent one that you can start to use today to shift from a sense of struggling with a pattern into a space of strength in relationship to it. So first of all, let's look at why we resist change. First up, it's just the understanding that we need to have is that change taking time isn't a flaw. It's just really part of our biology. Your mind has one really simple main focus. It's to keep you alive. It's not to keep you happy. It's to keep you alive. So your mind, many people have said before, is like a survival machine. And from your mind's point of view, from that evolutionary wiring that is the kind of base architecture of what the human mind is up to most of the time, and what it's focused on is safety. So familiarity is safe. So even if your habits are, maybe making you miserable, making you have less vitality, your nervous system kind of has this sense of, at least we know this territory. At least we know the feeling. We're familiar with the feeling of, feeling low-level stress all the time. We're familiar with the feeling of feeling anxiety. It's almost becomes a bit of an identity for us. So that's why sometimes when we're trying to change a really big pattern that's been around for a long time, like if we have been struggling with low self-worth for a long time, if we've been struggling with anxiety for a long time, if we've been playing out the same kinds of thoughts and emotional patterns and the same habits for a long time, sometimes there's resistance because it feels unfamiliar to be another way. The word I often use for this is we talk about having a certain emotional home, a mental emotional home. So change can feel scary, destabilizing, and concerning for our mind, even if that change is really positive. So it'll resist. When you're trying to learn maybe meditation or different things like that, you might feel some inertia where you suddenly don't want to practice that skill. You don't really want to make that change. It feels more somehow comforting or satisfying to do what you've always done. So psychologists have actually mapped out this in models like the stages of change or the Kubler-Ross curve, where we go through cycles sometimes with change of a little bit of denial, frustration, bargaining, and then experimentation and acceptance. Now, these stages are not neat. They're not linear. Sometimes it feels more like we're on a roller coaster where there's times when things are going well with changing, and then we go a little backwards, and then something goes well again, and then we're frustrated. And so it can be a little bit up and down. As you're changing a pattern, it is normal and natural that you will have times when you're nailing it, and then times when you fall off the horse, and then you get back on and you try again. All of that's really, really natural. But here's where most people get stuck. Most people, when they do get stuck, at least part of the challenge is that their relationship to the pattern is not helpful. So there's some kind of way of relating to this pattern that's layering on extra layers of suffering, of frustration, of victimhood, of hostility. And when we do this, research shows that there is an effect called the amplification effect, where when we try to resist, fight against, ignore, struggle against these kinds of mental emotional patterns, it actually amplifies them, meaning that they often will repeat themselves longer and get louder over time. It's like struggling in quicksand. The more that you struggle, the deeper you sink. So it's a little bit counterintuitive, isn't it? That some of our most aggravating and frustrating and painful patterns, when they arise, it feels like the most natural thing in the world would be to struggle with it or get rid of it, when we actually need to go a little bit against our instincts here and start to relax with the pattern. But then here's the key, the missing piece, is that we need to anchor to something greater, something deeper, something wiser than the pattern. This is the missing piece. The relationship with the pattern must shift from struggle to strength. So the missing piece for many people is what I call inner leadership. So inner leadership is a state of being characterized by an internal sense of really being connected to the part of you that is deeper than thoughts and emotions. Now, this core nature that we have is also a wellspring of inner strengths like peace, like wholeness, like clarity, like courage. The challenge is that for many of us, we often get disconnected from this part of ourselves in the modern world that we live in, and then even more so if we're going through a really tricky time in our lives. And this is where things get tricky, because the more disconnected we get from that part of ourselves, then the more we feel overwhelmed in the face of these patterns. We can feel disempowered in the face of those patterns. We can feel frustrated. We feel angry at the pattern, or we feel shame because we have this pattern. And when we have that relationship with the pattern, we actually end up hooked even deeper by it. So the struggle amplifies our fusion, our getting hooked by that particular pattern, and then it tends to repeat and repeat and repeat. So connected to this deeper part of ourselves, we become resourced. So when we are resourced, now we can have a completely different relationship with those patterns that we were getting caught up in. Now we can meet our mind and emotions like a wise, strong, loving leader or parent would do. We meet them with curiosity. We can meet them with wisdom. We can meet them with patience. We can meet them with understanding. We can meet them with strength and clarity. And then everything really does start to shift, not because we're forcing things to change, but actually because we are learning to end the battle with ourselves. And then all the tension that was caught up in that pattern can naturally start to soften. But even if the pattern is still there, there's fundamentally a core of who we are that is just okay with the way things are already. So the key to inner leadership is resourcing. Okay? This is the foundation of inner leadership. Resourcing means connecting to that deeper nature that you have and the qualities of your deeper nature, like calm, like love, like clarity, like courage. So it's about filling your internal tank when, before you try to drive up this mountain. So to give you an analogy that you'll probably relate to give you an idea of the power of being resourced, have you ever been in a stage in your life when you were falling in love? Can you remember what that was like? Like how you felt in your body, how you went about, daily life. Like suddenly, usually when we're in love, suddenly everything feels just easy. Like someone cuts you off in traffic when you're in love and you just smile and you think, oh, bless them. They probably need to get somewhere. So you just let them in and it doesn't bother you at all. Now, compare that to a time when you were hangry or when you got out of bed on the wrong side. Something bad happened that day that was just already challenging and someone does exactly the same thing. Right? They pull inside you, in front of you in traffic and you get on the horn and you're swearing and you're frustrated. Right? The situation didn't change, but you did. You were resourced. Right. So when you're resourced, everything is easier. It's easier to change a pattern. It's easier to work with your mind. I see this again and again and again. This is like, I just finished a 30-day course with about 100 people, and we were practicing resourcing every single day. And the testimonials, the stories that I heard about how much this changed patterns that people had been struggling with for years and years, it was absolutely incredible. One particular lady who was going through an extremely difficult personal life situation, really, really challenging, and had been spiraling into anxiety for months. And she said that this practice she didn't realize she was trying to stop the pattern and try to change negative thoughts into positive thoughts and do positive thinking and things like that. But what she didn't realize is that she wasn't, even though she was trying to change what wasn't working, she wasn't connecting to what was already strong and good and whole inside of her. So, and I've got a little quote from her here. She said, "It's like my mind isn't the enemy anymore and I feel like I finally have an ally inside." Another person described it as shifting from barely surviving to actually really living. That's what I mean by inner leadership. It's basically the practice of making your strengths much, much bigger than the pattern. And once that happens, the pattern just doesn't have the same grip on you anymore. It just doesn't, in the same way that the person in the traffic just doesn't bother you. in the same way anymore, and you would have been maybe ruminating about it for the whole rest of the day after someone cut you off in traffic. It just doesn't have the same ability to dominate and crowd you, because you're deeply connected to your strengths. And so there's just a sense of being anchored in a steadiness inside of you that is more than able to handle this pattern and meet it with understanding and patience and love. So resilience studies show that when people cultivate positive emotions, when they connect to their strengths, their nervous system recovers much faster from stress, they're more psychologically flexible, and they're more persistent in making change stick. So the stages of change model also shows that willpower is not enough to make a change. Of course, we need a certain amount of motivation, but it's not enough when we are not connected to emotional resources to carry us through. So without resourcing, change is like trying to run a marathon on an empty stomach. You might stagger forward for a few miles, but eventually you just start to run out of fuel. So with resourcing, you've got fuel in the tank. If you've been feeling really stuck, looping in the same patterns again and again and again, remember, try to change your relationship with the pattern. Try seeing what it's like to shift out of feeling like it's an enemy and get resourced. Connect to your inner strengths, as well as trying to change the pattern. Connect to what is strong, wise, loving, courageous inside of you so that you're better able to meet your life and all of the patterns, all of the parts of you from a place of inner strength. And if you would like support in doing that, what I'm going to do as a companion to this podcast today, I'm going to give you a meditation practice that I use to build inner resources with my clients called anchoring. And I really encourage you to give this a try. Many, many, many people have reported to me that it is through this practice of cultivating a connection to your inner strengths that really is fundamental to changing patterns that have been around for a really, really long time quite rapidly. So I hope these resources and this podcast is really helpful for you. Give it a try, see what effect it has on your body, on your mind, and in your life. I wish you well with this practice. It's wonderful to be back here on the podcast after some time away. I'm really looking forward to this season of sharing more practices and insights and tools that are going to help you to grow your inner strength. I'm always practicing alongside you, wishing you a great week. And I'll be back here next week for the next podcast. Till then, take care and look after yourself. If you know someone who you think might benefit from listening to this episode, share it with them. Sharing it could really help them to feel better and improve the quality of their life. And if you found this episode helpful, remember to subscribe to this podcast so that you can receive more tips on growing your inner strength and keep practicing along with us every week. And if you'd like some more support in becoming mentally, emotionally, and spiritually stronger, come check out the offerings I have to support you on my website at www.melliobrien.com. As well as coaching and course options, I also have a bunch of free resources for you, including a free Deep Resilience Care Package, which you can begin to use right away to get some immediate relief from stress and suffering, improve your resilience and mental well-being, and help you navigate whatever you're going through with more wisdom, skill, and confidence. You can find the links for all of that in the show notes. Thanks again for tuning in. Take care and stay strong.